the sense of power that is evident in working before a live audience, with a man before a live audience, the sense of power and the kind of two-way communication. This is not, obviously, not often felt in radio. I know that I don't often feel it in the sense that there is a great crowd out there. It's just not there for me. When I work, I'm working in a vacuum, in a closed, sealed room. And I can tell you this, that as a person who has done a great deal of stage work of one kind or another, I can say that the sense of power that a person knows performing on the stage is a sublime thing. It's the thing that draws people into the theater. Don't let them give you this jazz about, I'm here because of the art. I'm always amused when I hear an actor being interviewed, and he's talking about the artistic, sure, there is a percentage of that involved too, but a very small percentage. Let me say this, that the sense of power that a man feels when he walks before a camera, or when he walks out of the wings and onto the stage, the sense of the power that he has over all the people watching, the audience, is by far and away the greatest thing that draws him to what he does. And the personal sense of power, I would like to know how many actors, for example, would really work and would really and genuinely act if there was a law passed that there would be no credit lines given. Nobody's name would ever be mentioned. Would change a lot of attitudes, I can tell you, towards acting overnight. And it would also change a lot of people in the audience's attitudes towards the theater. They would be furious if they didn't know the names of the people. For some reason or other, knowing their names makes them more important, even in the case of the bad actor. And, when you get into this business of crowd psychology and the great sense of fantastic power you feel, you're going to hear this in all the conventions. That is the reason why I played this record today. I was listening to it the other night, and I thought, I can remember the first time that I attended a convention, which was not, it was 1952 was the first convention I ever saw. 52? Yeah. And I went into this convention hall, and almost always the convention halls seem hot, even if they're not hot. They have 5,000 air conditioners all going, but they're hot. The reason they are heated is, or the sense of being heated. They're not really heated. You can look at the thermometer and it says 74, but you're walking around and you feel like it's 110 in there. The reason, of course, is the electric tension, in a way, this constant sense of excitement that is bubbling up inside of everybody all the time, even when it seems as though nothing is going on. It's always there. It's always latent. You get 3,000 people there bound together on one thing, and generally bound together by a set of abstractions with a sense of being embattled, and that's very important, with a sense of being embattled and that there is an enemy. Now, in the case of the convention, the enemy, of course, is the other party. That there is an enemy, there is always that little thin thing that can break out in any direction. And you walk into the convention hall and you feel it immediately. You just, this hum, and all the machinery is humming, the air conditioners are humming, you can hear the sound of the PA system echoing back and forth. And then, at night, when the speeches begin, when after all the preliminary work is done, and incidentally, the preliminary work is important to the building up of the dramatic impact of the real thing of the meeting, the solidarity, the kind of religio, socio-psycho involvement that everyone has in this thing. It builds up slowly, until finally there is a tiny man. Can I have that record again? I want to show just a piece of it. There is a tiny man standing on a podium, and the lights are shining down on him, and everybody has slowly drawn toward this moment. It doesn't make any difference what he says. And this is the thing I would like to, one time I would like to see somebody write, it doesn't matter, Don, any place. Sometime I would like to see somebody write a treatise, and undoubtedly there have been several written, I just haven't run into them, a treatise on what this phenomenon has meant to man's history. This phenomenon of the single man standing before a vast crowd. Hitler was a perfect example of it in our time. He almost completely solidified and brought together so many diverse elements in man's nature. The exalting, of course, the power to make a man feel that he was bigger. You know, man constantly feels that he's bigger than nature itself. This is what Hitler always told the Germans. In addition to that, there is also the sense of violence that's always there, to do violence. We all have it deep within ourselves, and even the most simple or plain of Staten Island type people will have, if given the proper provocation, will rise to heights of violence that you never possibly would have thought was inside of them, under all the proper triggering. Believe me, it's there. And it's a fascinating thing to see in performance. I have seen, for example, evangelists speak total nonsense, complete and utter non-sequitorial nonsense for 40 minutes at a time, but their eyes burn. No one can quote them, you see, after they're through. I sat in a hall one time where there was an evangelist, a famous evangelist was speaking, and he walked out on the stage. And incidentally, there's another thing that must be impressed on you, and that is this, that all the great successful practitioners of this have always striven at all odds and always, under all circumstances, to be the plainest of men when they are out on the stage. When I say plain, I mean plain dress. You know, we like to think of guys with badges and swords. No. The really effective ones were almost Spartan in their simplicity. Hitler was always surrounded by guys who had big fancy hats and swords. Hitler's uniforms were drab almost to monasticity. He would walk out with nothing, just a dark gray uniform and a dark shirt, no badges, maybe a tiny, tiny symbol somewhere, and that's all. A brilliant showman, probably just perhaps more instinctive than anything else. Anyway, I remember this evangelist who always wears dark clothing, completely white shirt, dark suit, dark tie. That's all. He walks out on the stage with brilliant lights on him. Brilliant, just absolutely brilliant. And the rest of the auditorium, and this is important too, is almost in total darkness. The people are dark, you see, because when you're in darkness, you can become part of a mass. If everyone is looking at everyone else, there is this little sense of self-consciousness. Look at this little short, fat, idiotic-looking woman sitting here next to me. But no, when the lights are out, everybody is one, and everybody is handsome, and everyone is exalted. And so he walks out on the stage, you see. He looks down at the audience, and there's this long pause. And the pause gets kind of like a rubber band that's been stretched beyond its endurance. The pause rises, and he looks down with burning eyes upon the crowd. And then he starts out slowly. Sinners, you have come. Sinners, you have come. And it rises and rises and rises. And he speaks, if you listen to him carefully, if you've ever taken a dictaphone recording of what he says, the nonsense flows as self-contradictory. One phrase contradicts another, and it rises higher and higher and higher. But by the end of maybe 20 or 30 minutes, the crowd is to a tremendous frenzy of exaltation, and they are ready to march in any direction. And the interesting thing about it is that nobody can ever quote this man. All they can say is, he's dynamic. He's dynamic, and he's so sincere. Well, these are fascinating manifestations, you know. This thing, the desire to be led and to be exalted, and the desire to lead and to exalt are I think, the most interesting facets of man's whole personality. There's no other animal that we know of that has this. And when the moment arises, now I'll give you the cue here. When the moment arises, when the lights are dimmed in the auditorium, and let's say it's 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, and thousands of people have gathered in, and they're all pressed in. And you know that one of the in fact, I think it was Roosevelt, in the early 30s, they even went so far as to turn the air conditioning off during one speech. To turn the air conditioning off, because the air conditioning, you see, that heat that was generated within each man excited him even more. Until finally the whole crowd was rising to a frenzy. They were ready to march. And if you've ever seen a great victory march after a man has been nominated, a victory march where suddenly everybody is out there, he doesn't know why. He's carrying his sign. 15 minutes ago, he said he was for somebody else. 20 minutes ago, he said he was for somebody even before that. And now suddenly he's out there with his sign and he's marching. The speech rises and rises and rises until finally man's brain swirls in this great sense of exaltation.
Of the captain
Listen to
of
him.
industry, and who has held my views
They can't control themselves now. There's no going back.
Hello, delegate.
You feel it rising, the heat, the tension.
I am at a loss for words.
Can't you just see this guy standing down there with his coat collar open, his tie pulled down, sweat pouring off his face, great light beaming down on him? The PA system is echoing and echoing. He
As
pauses.
I stand before you on this historic occasion,
How can they control
all
themselves?
America, nay, indeed, all of the Western world awaits the decision we are about to make.
He assures the mob that they're important. The mob is great. They're about to make a great decision. Listen to him. How can they control themselves? Here is their
I am
chance.
humble and proud
Humility is important.
to call
We are all
this
smaller than the
great
occasion.
American a friend of many
He
years
is now
standing,
pointing to the Savior.
a man whose name shall rank with the greatest presidents in the history of these United States of America.
Great Scott.
Ladies and gentlemen,
They're pouring into the aisles. They haven't even heard the name yet.
to place in nomination for the office of President of the United States of America.
Oh, I mean, aren't you ready to march? Oh, this is, to me, one of the aspects of man's little nature that no one ever even talks about. Oh, they just don't want to mention it, you know. And it's within every one of us, believe me. Don't think that because you're an egghead you won't march. Daddy, you will march quicker than anybody. It's a fascinating thing. I one time went when I was a kid. I was just a tiny urchin, and I had gotten a job. I had gotten a job in the steel mill, and one thing led to the other. And this was when the steel mills were having a tremendous battle with the labor forces and with unionization and one thing and another. And it was just a great rising, hissing, steaming, boiling cauldron. And I was just, I was about 16. And it was in the summer, and I was working as an office boy, and the next thing I knew, they had me down at a union meeting. And people kept jumping up and shouting and pounding on tables, and other people kept pounding on the dais up in front with gavels. And the next thing that happened was that all of the men, there must have been 1,000 of them in this meeting hall. There were about 4 guys who were controlling the mob, and they kept jumping. There were patsies, of course, in the crowd who were shills, you might say. And the man who was giving the speech would say, "And I stand before you tonight," and he would rise, and I'm listening to this, and I recognized, even in my primeval mind of the period, my early Neolithic mind, I recognized that what this man was saying bore no relationship at all to what was going on, the actual facts of the world that we lived in and worked in. But it didn't matter, you see, and he kept shouting, until finally the crowd marched right out of the hall, marched down the street, And the next thing I knew, people had torches. I don't know where torches came from, but fire, by the way, is very important to a really wild emotional catharsis. And Hitler knew this too. He always had torches raised. That if you've ever seen a mob somewhere in the South, you'll see the torch raised sometime. Next thing you know, there's a fire burning, because fire is very primeval, boy. And so the next thing I knew, people got torches. They marched right to the front gate of the mill, and they broke down the gate, and they were destroying the clock house and all this, just marching and screaming and hollering. And the police arrived with hoses, and everybody. It was sort of like the next morning, everybody woke up with a hangover. It's a wild thing. I never saw such a thing in my life. But it's there. Oh, it's there. Believe me, it's there. It's down within, because, and I think it's even more evident in our time. It's more there during our day than ever before. It isn't because man has not progressed really as man. He has progressed as a machine maker, but he hasn't progressed really as man. Because, you see, as he gets more, I feel, because he gets more and more and more abstract with his life, there are fewer and fewer things which he can really believe in, that he can become really transported by. And so he is willing to march almost on any provocation, even if he has to march against himself, if he has to hold up a big sign that says, "I hate myself, down with me." If somebody gets up and gives him the right word and raises the temperature in the room high enough, he will march. Believe me, he will march. It's an interesting phenomenon. And I can say this, that as a person who has spoken before groups of people where there were maybe 2,000 or 3,000 in the crowd, the bigger the crowd is, the larger the crowd gets, the more faceless it gets. I'm speaking to you as a person who has, for example, maybe some of you remember when out at Central Park, for example, about 3 years ago, I did some humor things during things that were going on out at Central Park. And at that time, there were upwards of 5,000 and 6,000 people gathered there. I've done Carnegie Hall things where there were as many as 4,000 people in the hall with nothing but this great, faceless, dark mass facing you, and it doesn't really face you. It's just out there. And the thing that's important to remember is that when you're addressing a large number of people, it is much easier to be in control than when you're addressing a small group of people. This is something that very few people seem to understand. They say, how can you get out before all those people? It's much easier to get out before all those people than before 10 or 12 people. And also, it is much easier to be in a crowd and to listen to someone in a great crowd than it is in a small group. And that's why all the great tyrants of the past have concentrated on huge crowds, not little crowds. They didn't stand on street corners and talk to 28 people. They talked on balconies overlooking great squares where there would be massed maybe 2 million people. This is, as any speaker can tell you, this is a situation that is loaded. Wow, it's loaded. And the sense, though, that have you ever asked yourself, what does the man who is doing it feel like? Have you ever really asked yourself, what does he feel like when he's standing out there in front of this massive, and he feels them reacting, you see? He says a word, he says, and fellow Americans, and you feel that coming back to you. Have you ever asked yourself what it feels like to be a man who has said this or who is in this situation? Well, I can tell you, having been in the situation several times, it is probably the most exciting feeling that a man that I have ever known. Exciting, it's a sense almost of godlike power that goes beyond your power. I mean, that raises you to a height of millions of feet tall. And it is this same sense, you see, modified, of course, because most actors don't have a personal involvement in their material that they're espousing. They don't really have the feeling of saying something that is from within them. But nevertheless, they get up there and they are 40 feet tall. And everyone has the secret desire to be looked up to, the secret desire to be paid homage to, the secret desire to be in power. And if you're in doubt about that, I would suggest that you look in any one of our advertisements, almost any one of the big ads that you see for automobiles and for hats and for skid chains and for overshoes and for wash and wear suits, they all subtly say, power. You will have power over the lesser dressed. You will have power over the lesser shod. You will have power over the lesser riders in the lesser automobiles. And it just flows on out of us. It's a fascinating thing. As a matter of fact, the great tendency of one of the saddest things that happens when a man works before great crowds is this sense that when the great crowd is responding, that in the end you will do or say anything to make them respond. It is a kind of a mutual adoration thing. And I know that, well, I've heard many nightclub comics, for example, who sound as though they're saying things, and when they say things, when they contradict themselves, or when they deal in half-truths, they often start out idealistic. They often start out with a real sense of point and direction in what they have to say. But then, after maybe 2 or 3 years of working the trail, the crowd applauding and the crowd being part of him and being one of him becomes much more important than what you have to say. And as long as you can make people think you're saying something and they will respond to that, that is even better. The terrible sense of unity that you get is something that has to be experienced, really. You know, I listen to conventions. I'm always fascinated by them. I wanted to go to the convention this year. I, in fact, had kind of planned to go to the convention to make some reports back on radio of the way, you know, the way it really feels there, the tension and the sense in the air, rather than talk about the specific candidates. To walk into somebody's caucus room, or to walk into someone's campaign room and come back and tell you how it feels in Lyndon Johnson's room, where his headquarters are. How does it feel in Kennedy's room? How does it feel in Nixon's room? You know, all the people there. What are the little inner sensations and tensions that you feel? You really get some interesting things going in this world of mass man, and it's a thing which we all desire. There's no question about it. We all desire somehow to be in a vast mob. We have this terrible split right down the middle of us. The split that on the one side says, I am an individual. By George, I'm an individual. And on the other side, I'm mankind. I love mankind. Well, in a sense, the two are really diametrically opposed. And you'll keep shifting back and forth between the two of them. When you feel that mankind has walked away from you, then you become very much the individual. When you feel that you are able to, in some way or another, draw mankind to you, then you become a non-individual, you see. It depends on which side of the particular coin you happen to be working on at the moment. I've seen this constant contradiction arise when people are gathered in sales meetings, for example, who work in mass media. I'll see a guy say, well, of course, I believe in individual initiative. I think of all of us here, we believe in ideas. And then in the next phrase, he will say, well, what about the mass out there? What about the mass? In a sense that he has negated exactly what he has said prior to that moment.